Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of African Battle Royale. Let's get right into it. Namibia will be invading Southeast. So, despite it looking like Namibia and Botswana have been best friends this whole series, they've had a lot of disputes with each other. And right now, the current dispute is kind of a silly one, but basically, the first time South Africa got divided up, Namibia and Botswana made a treaty, and then the second time they got divided up, they made a different treaty. And so there's a bit of land over here, like in this general region, that is claimed by Namibia, even though it's owned by Botswana, and Namibia is willing to go to war to take it. And so Namibia will send some troops into Botswanan territory, and it's actually going quite well for them. Obviously, they're going to take the land that they actually claim, and they're going to officially add that land to their territory. However, Botswana's old friends of Lesotho and Eswatini don't really like that they just got betrayed by Namibia. They kind of see Namibia as an aggressor, and at this point, Namibia is getting pushed back as Cape Town gets taken, which was Namibia's biggest city. Even though it's really a South African city, Namibia loses the territory, and the territory is given back to Botswana by the law of that territory because it's now controlled by Botswana. But Botswana will continue invading into Namibia, and Namibia will refuse to surrender. And then right when Namibia's government is considering surrendering for real, because this is actually absurd as to how badly they're doing, Congo... Sorry, the audio was cutting out a bit there. Hopefully you got everything I just said. But Congo is invading to ensure that Namibia will not exist, and Namibia is cooked. That's what I was basically saying. So yeah, let's see how they get divided up. So Botswana was able to twist the hand of Congo to get a lot of land because Congo didn't really join in the war, and they knew that, so they didn't want to take too much land from Botswana. And right now they're pretty good allies. Also, Congo's getting huge. Egypt will be invading south. Egypt is tired of the Dark Blue Alliance existing and going to war with them, and their population is also really tired of it, and so they've decided this is the final straw. Nothing happened, they just really want to get rid of this alliance. And you know who else does? Well, a lot of countries, but especially Ethiopia, who also joins this war and starts invading into Sudan, which helps Egypt to cut off Sudan from their lifeline, which is the sea that allows them to import a lot of things. So obviously they can still import troops through here, but if Rwanda were ever to join the war, this would get really bad really quickly for the Dark Blue Alliance. Obviously the Dark Blue Alliance isn't helpless though. They start invading into Ethiopia's territories over here, which they lose pretty quickly. And Ethiopia had kind of given up their ability to defend themselves at the end of the last war, so they're kind of a little bit screwed as they get squeezed down to their main core territories. However, not everything is going well as the CAR puppet state is quickly being overrun by Egypt, as Egypt decides to focus all of their troops on a single effort, which is basically going away from their supply lines towards the capital, which is captured of the CAR. So the capital of the CAR is captured. And with that, the CAR puppet government is overthrown, and a new government loyal to Egypt is installed, which is very, very bad for the Dark Blue Alliance as they start invading into Cameroon. Sudan is really trying their best to defend against all of these invasions, and they go a little bit into Egypt there, but that just angers Egypt even more, and they start invading even faster into Sudan. And Sudan is already super unstable from all the wars that have gone on within them at this point. And their government is also basically a puppet government of the Dark Blue Alliance, and they're just not able to hold up. And all of a sudden, the front line pretty quickly starts to... Well, first of all, there's a massive encircling here. And second of all, the front line is now looking like this, which is really bad for the Dark Blue Alliance because they just lost all of Sudan, as well as their ability to easily take out Ethiopia. They are pushing back in Cameroon, which is pretty much their best front line because Egypt put their puppet state in charge of attacking Cameroon, and the puppet state is super incompetent, which means that the CAR is just not going to work. And in fact, the new puppet state is replaced with a different puppet state. So now there's kind of like two governments, and the old and the new government is invading into the other government that's also a new government, yelling at each other. But I'm just gonna put this as this color because because the government that has the capital is kind of the more official government. Meanwhile, in the east, Ethiopia is struggling as Djibouti is captured by Somalia, who also then takes the Eritrean coast of Ethiopia and starts invading into Sudanese territory. And Ethiopia is forced to withdraw from basically all of their territory. And at this point, Egypt is kind of on their own, and they don't really want to be on their own, so they look for allies to figure out who else they can get to join them in what's basically the Second African Great War. And they do get one ally in Malawi, but that's not going to really do anything as Tanzanian forces fight, and forces from Malawi fight back hard, but not hard enough, as eventually they are caved. However, this does allow for Egyptian and Ethiopian forces to liberate parts of Ethiopia, as a massive rebellion happens throughout Ethiopia against occupying forces, forcing occupying forces to withdraw all the way to here, while the CAR is continuing to, I don't know, just the new government of the CAR is taking away the land that is still occupied by the old government's forces. And eventually all of the old government's forces flee to Egypt, leaving the CAR fully in the hands of the new government. So Egypt realizes they have to get another ally because Malawi did absolutely nothing. And they look to Nigeria, because if Nigeria were in the war, that would stop. Because if Nigeria were in the war, that would stop Togo from sending troops to Cameroon, which would be very helpful, because right now that's really the biggest thorn in Egypt's side. So they asked Nigeria to join, and Nigeria says that they're going to stay neutral, which is really bad for Egypt, because Sudan is now starting to get liberated. So then Egypt goes to Rwanda, and Rwanda's like, are you kidding me? There's absolutely no way I'm going to join this war. I would lose, terribly, and our people would be destroyed. Then Egypt goes to Congo, and Congo is very interested in this war. Congo is obviously an expansionist country, as are most of the countries in the world, or in Africa at this point. But Congo realizes if they were to join Egypt's side, they could get a lot of land out of it. So they do. And this is going to basically be the beginning of the end for the Dark Blue Alliance in this war, because Congo is going to invade very quickly and just basically take out Cameroon. They're going to establish the new old government in the CAR, which is going to allow Egypt to pretty quickly take out most of the CAR, as Cameroon has been reduced a lot in their territorial size. So it looks like the Dark Blue Alliance might be about to crumble, and in fact they are very much crumbling. But they're still in a slight position of power in that they have a lot of Ethiopian lands, and they could fight this war reasonably for another decent amount of time. And just to ensure that they have a decent position of power, right before they agree to a peace treaty, they invade into Congo over here, just to show Congo they have the power to fight the war for a bit longer. And then the two alliances will finally agree to peace. And look at this new map of Africa. So much has changed, you can barely even recognize it. But let's go through all of the changes. First of all, Cameroon has been greatly reduced. The CAR is given a new pro-Egyptian government, as well as Sudan. Ethiopia gets a lot of former Sudanese land, but in exchange gives some of their old land over to Tanzania, Somalia. They annexed Malawi, so that's the only country that's actually gone because of this war. So Malawi has been fully annexed. Nigeria did absolutely nothing, and I think that's really all of the consequences. Mauritius, Madagascar will be invading southwest. So Eswatini is a country that has not really been attacked since South Africa had its whole thing, and so they have kind of reduced their military a decent amount, and Madagascar is going to take advantage of this as they land troops into areas that I think were part of Mozambique at one point but are now part of Eswatini, and the local population actually celebrates them, and Eswatini was not expecting this. So obviously they're going to call in Lesotho, but Botswana stays suspiciously silent. These guys are going to try and repel the invasion from Madagascar, but it's not going to work very well, as more troops from Madagascar and Cape Verde, which has an army that is surprisingly large for its size. If you don't remember, this is Cape Verde, these 5 islands, or I guess this small chain of islands. Their army is comparable in size to Equatorial Guinea or even Gabon. And so they are sending their entire navy to deal with this conflict to help out Madagascar. And they're actually being surprisingly successful. And this war is going to go on for a while, so let's actually do another event while it's still going on. Togo will be invading Northwest. Dark Blue Alliance and the Tan Alliance are at odds. Basically, Mauritania and Togo got into a big argument over a very small amount of territory right over here, which both think it should belong to them. Togo decides to move troops into here, and that's kind of where it ends, as Mauritania declares that it to be an act of war and starts invading, and they quickly take a lot of Togo's northern kind of useless territory that they had for some reason. But Togo will stand strong. They're getting some aid from Cameroon and a lot from Tanzania, Somalia, who's helping them all the way across the ocean. However, Senegal and Mauritania are both way more actively involved in this war, so things are not going that well for Togo, but it's going very slowly. So let's actually check back in on the other war, in which Madagascar is starting to get repelled, and in fact they fully get repelled from the mainland and eventually just give up. Back to this war, though, we do see another country joining on the side of Togo, and that country is the Ivory Coast. They also have terrible relations with the Tan Alliance, but they're going to invade into the Tan Alliance anyway, and Mauritania is now being invaded, so they're going to withdraw from a decent portion of Togo, like so, to begin attacking Cote d'Ivoire. But with the help of Ivory Coast, as well as a lot of troops from the Dark Blue Alliance, Mauritania is going to consistently get pushed back until they are now on the defensive. And this is going to awaken one country who has done absolutely nothing this series. It's the only country who's done absolutely nothing. But Morocco will start invading into Mauritania. They have beef with Mauritania over Western Sahara, so it makes sense that they would do it. And Mauritania is now losing the war on two fronts, and they don't really see a path to victory, so they'll agree to have a negotiated peace settlement. And you might notice something interesting about this map. What happened to the Tan Alliance? Well, they were forced to disband their alliance with each other and forbidden to ever make an alliance with each other ever again, in exchange for not much territory actually being exchanged. Equatorial Guinea will be making an alliance with Eswatini. So following the chaos that just happened with Madagascar, Eswatini wants more assurance, so they go to the Dark Blue Alliance and are like, can we join? And they're like, do you remember when you were just invading us along with Zimbabwe? So they're not allowed in. Then they go to Rwanda's alliance and are like, hey, can we join? And Rwanda's like, sure, but I don't think we'll be able to help you very much. I don't know why you would join our alliance. I don't even know why our alliance exists in the first place. It's kind of random that it does. So then they finally go to the Berry Alliance, and they are let into the Berry Alliance. Cameroon will be making an alliance with Mauritania. So in a shock move, Mauritania will join the Dark Blue Alliance. They didn't have a new government installed when the Tan Alliance was dissolved, but they are a democracy, and the opposition finally won after like 20 years of being out of power, after they just lost that war terribly, and because of that, they decided to join the Dark Blue Alliance. Senegal will be invading Northeast. Seems someone didn't like that. Senegal did not like that decision, and they are going to basically try and force Mauritania to become allies with them, which also violates a peace treaty. So this is not going to go very well for Senegal, even though they're actually stronger than Mauritania in terms of their army. Not only is Togo about to start helping, Ivory Coast and Morocco, who are also parties to the peace treaty, will start sending their troops in, and even little Guinea-Bissau will start their own little invasion into territory owned by Senegal to try and get some more land out of this. And long story short, Senegal will not be surviving this. This is just the biggest attack in history of a single country. And just like that, this is what it looks like now. Mauritania had to give up a bit of their eastern land to satisfy the other people who were upset with them. Sierra Liberia will be facing a rebellion. So the new government of Sierra Liberia, because it's not federalized, is kind of like, it's a democracy, but it switches between a party that's dominated by Sierra Leone and one that's dominated by Liberia. And this will culminate in Liberia declaring their independence from Sierra Liberia, because basically all the rest of the territory is controlled by Sierra Leone because they're the actual government. So Sierra Liberia will move their troops into Liberia, and they're doing fairly well at this. They need to deal with this rebellion, but then Cote d'Ivoire will come in, and they're claiming to just be helping with the rebellion, but actually what they want is to get some land out of it. And so the rebellion will be dealt with, but in exchange, some of this land is going to go to Cote d'Ivoire. Like so. Last event of this episode. Togo will be making an alliance with Morocco. So this makes sense. Morocco has been allied with Togo and Mauritania throughout the end of this episode, so obviously it makes sense for Morocco to actually join the Dark Blue Alliance fully. So make sure to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.